Welcome to the leading podcast for long-term weight management. Subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss an episode. You can connect with Jenny on all social media channels. You can also sign up to the newsletter to receive frequent content and tips for weight loss success.
Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the Power of the Food podcast. I am your host, Jenny McDonald, and I apologise because it's been a few weeks since I've recorded a podcast. It's been a busy first 6 months. Can you believe we are already in July? It is crazy. So I hope you're having a great week and I hope life is treating you well. So today I'm incredibly excited because I have a guest with me. Yay! It's been a while since I've had a guest on the show. So I connected with this lady a couple of weeks ago at Holly Matthews' Festival. And this lady was one of the speakers. And as I listened and as I breathed and as I danced, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit more in a moment, but I thought, wow, this lady would be just great as a guest on the Power Over Food podcast. So here we are. So Cat Merrick is founder of Breathe, Dance and Yoga, and through her work she leads women back to their own inner guidance. And I'm going to let Cat tell you more about this and how she does this. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Cat.
Oh, hi Jenny, thanks so much for having me.
You are welcome.
I absolutely love coming and talking to people on podcasts, and yeah, thanks ever so much for inviting me. I'm really excited.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that you said yes, because I literally came and grabbed you after the talk, didn't I? And I just went, will you be on my podcast? And then I was like, oh, hang on, rewind. Hello, my name is Jenny. But I was just super excited. So let's just start off with a little bit about you and your story and how you came to doing the work that you do. I mean, I don't know a huge amount, so this is great for me to find out as well. So where did it all begin?
Yeah, I mean, where I'm at now has been the culmination of all sorts of different experiences, and has built, from everything I do pretty much is around what I've experienced. I don't like to talk that much around something that I've not had some dealings with or some experience of. But essentially what I'm doing now, the whole idea about leading women back to their own inner guidance, is because I truly 100% believe that we all have the answers to what we need to do. And it's that kind of connection back into your soul and your intuition and really listening in. Like, we all talk about it, don't we? Like that, we had that gut feeling, and in hindsight, that whole thing about coming back to yourself, I think is really important, because that's kind of what I've done. And I could really tell at certain points in my life when I was like, this just doesn't feel right, doesn't feel in alignment, it doesn't light me up. And when I've trusted that and changed things, it's always led to a better outcome. And at the same time, you might need a few people to guide you along the way, to let you know what are the tools that you can do that. But essentially, you're your own guru. Like, you don't need somebody permanently telling you what to do. If you listen inwards, you've got the answers yourself. They might not always be the answers you want to hear. And that is the hard bit, because sometimes, something's not serving you. You've got to make some hard decisions. But the more you ignore that, it just impacts every other area of your life. It dulls your shine, it dulls your vibrancy. And I think as women as well, we've got so many different pressures, particularly nowadays, while still striving to get recognition and equality, that if we're not tuning in and listening in, then we just get all these burdens put on us that just weight us down. And I think it's important that we recognise that. And the way I do that is through a few different modalities. I mean, my business is called Breathe, Dance and Yoga, and I essentially do all those three things. So by tuning into the breathwork is very popular at the moment. It's a bit of a buzzword, but it's also important to recognise that there's so many different breathwork practices. And really, I came to breathwork through yoga. So in yoga, it's called pranayama, and there's lots of different pranayamic techniques. But essentially, I came to the way I teach breathwork now. It's more of a functional, everyday breathing, because you could go and do a class for an hour, but then for the rest of the 23 hours of the day, your breathing is still going to have an impact on you. So it's really about allowing people to understand how the breath works from a chemical and physiological and biomechanical point of view, and how they can create a better breathing habit that then affects their energy, affects their health, affects their mood and everything else. So that's kind of the part of my business that works with breath. And then yoga, which has a lot to answer for in keeping me calm and de-stressed. I've been a yoga teacher for 6 years, and that came at a point in my life. I was a school teacher, a secondary school teacher, and I just started to feel like not able to cope with the stress of that. So I went back to yoga. I'd always done yoga in the past from a dance point of view for flexibility, because that's kind of one of the first things people think of, like yoga is about flexibility. It's not at all, but from my point of view when I was a dancer, it was a really helpful tool to be flexible. I went back to it probably when I was about 35 and realised the absolute power it has just to regulate the nervous system, bring you back out of that stressful state. So that started my yoga teacher training. And really important, again, I mainly work with women over 35, and it just helps you to connect back into your body. Many women have got a dysregulated relationship with their bodies, and it just allows you to tap back into the power of it. It works on strength and balance and mobility, and just allows you to become self-aware and self-compassionate and all the things that we need.
Yeah.
And then the dance element is something that I've always done from childhood. I went and did a dance degree. I taught dance as a freelance dance artist creatively, and within the school that I used to work as, so GCSE A-level, BTEC Performing Arts. So the dance element has come through that, and it's really switched itself around back to when I was a 6-year-old child, basically, because I've gone through all the technique and the creativity and the choreography and the artistic processes. And actually, the moments I feel most connected and free is when I'm in a field at a festival with some house music and my body's just moving. And it's like, actually, this is accessible for everybody. And you don't have to have had any training. You just need to allow that sense of movement. So the breath, the dance, the yoga, they're all different ways that we can connect back in. And then once we've connected back in, we actually get to make the right choices for ourselves. And it comes from an empowered place rather than a place of should or expectation from others or fear or all of those things. So the reason I do what I do is because that kind of last few years of teaching really rocked me. And it was like I'd done it for such a long time that why couldn't I enjoy it anymore? So moving away from that and setting up a business, and then realizing that I can make a difference to others has been a journey. And for myself, it's been about understanding my own self-worth and what I have to offer, and recognizing my abilities to give to others. So it's like I'm probably just a few steps ahead of the journey of some of the women that I'm working with, because I've still got lots of things that I'm uncovering and learning, and that self-discovery journey and habits and patterns that might be keeping me stuck. And then I've got to work through them. Yeah, I've just kept talking at you, but that's essentially why I do what I do, from being a school teacher to running my own business now and helping other women come back to that sense of self-worth, but really about their own inner guidance.
It's such a change in career, isn't it?
Huge. And it's really, there's lots of teachers leaving the profession because there is so much stress involved and demand that's placed on them, but you're almost institutionalized. You're very encapsulated by the environment, by the work, that when you come out of that and open up, it's like this whole other landscape of working, of business, and you're like, oh wow, okay. So like it's almost, I've had to allow myself to create what I do, because it felt like somebody should have told me that you're allowed to do this, Cat, and this would work really well. But actually I've had to trust myself, and sometimes I'll run an event and I'll feel so sick about it beforehand, but it'll just be an idea about pulling all these different modalities together. The whole self-doubt and self-belief I'm still working through as well, and it's that bravery of just having a go at things and realizing that there are no rules, and if it works, it works. And I think the main thing, my mission, is to really allow women to feel connected and secure in themselves, and that we are unique, and your uniqueness is a superpower, and that if you're happy and contented and approaching life in a way that makes you feel good, that has a ripple effect that goes out to, it affects, if you've got children, but your family members, your friends, people can see that and they're like, oh, there's an energy here, and it makes them want to do better. So if I work with somebody, I know that's going to affect maybe 3 or 4 people around them as well. So that keeps me grounded in what I do, to allow me to get over those hurdles as well.
I think it's such a wonderful feeling when you make that connection with yourself, isn't it? And you suddenly feel like you're completely aligned with where you're supposed to be, and you start to uncover things that you'd never ever considered, never thought of, like running your own business. And I used to describe it as, I feel like I'm operating on a different level. I didn't know this level was here, and it's like, wow, how did I not know this? How do other people not know this?
Yeah.
Our behaviours are so ingrained. We kind of get up and we do what we do every day, and it's like we're on this hamster wheel, and it's just, we hear people say it, and I used to say it, well, it's just the way it is. It's just, this is just my life. This is what I've been given. This is what I have to do. And it's like, when you just step back and when you learn how to ground yourself and connect with yourself, it just opens the gates. It's incredible.
Yeah. And that can feel unsettling sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think it's acknowledging that it's not an easy place to necessarily be. Like there's a bit of discomfort around it.
Yes.
It's you're in your comfort zone a lot of the time, even if it's something that you're not necessarily, even if you're already recognizing this doesn't feel like it's fulfilling, allowing me to be at my full potential. There's a comfort zone within that, because you're in your habits and patterns with it, and the brain is wanting it to be easy. So it's like that well-worn path. So when you shift out of that, when you go, oh, actually, I know this isn't right, and you shift out of it, there's discomfort, because it's extra energy, it's extra effort. And I think that's where then people get scared, and that's why it's useful. That's why I love to literally hold women's hand and pull them through that, and be there as a support to say, well, this is okay, this is normal. Keep coming back in and allowing yourself to tune in, and then eventually it becomes a better habit and pattern, that you allow yourself to trust yourself more, instead of drowning out the noise, the voice, whatever it is that, sometimes it's a feeling, it might be images, it might be pictures. Everybody's intuition is a little bit different, but it doesn't mean it's easy to do that. And I think acknowledging that allows you to take that step with confidence, that you go, okay, it might not be that easy. What's the alternative? It's easy to end up stuck in a rut, really, and I can see some women really do that, and I want to empower them to be able to step out of that.
Yeah, well, it's like you say, your subconscious just wants to keep you safe, and as far as your subconscious mind's concerned, it's safe to just stay where you are, because so far in life, you might not have come to too much harm. You know, you're still alive, you're still breathing. So actually, you know, we know we can pay the bills with this job or whatever it is. We know if we stay in this relationship, we you know, even if we're not comfortable, we know what it is, we know what we're getting. And to step out of that can be really, really scary. They're just examples, obviously. But it's funny because you said a moment ago, a couple of minutes ago, about the self-doubts. And I think we use that as a sign of, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. But actually, if you think every time you take a step forward with whatever it is in your life, you have self-doubts, don't you? And it's just managing that internally. And like you say, saying, you know, it's okay, I'm safe, I'm choosing to do this. And I recognize that my monkey mind is going, no, don't do it, it's scary, and these are all the reasons you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And then it's being able to go, but I also know that this is my path and this is the way I need to, whether that is, for my listeners, lose weight, change my relationship with food, or whatever it is, to move forward. It's actually, listeners, I want you to kind of really sit at some point after this podcast and just go within and ask, what is it I need to know today? Because when you just do that, you get the answers, don't you? It's just
Absolutely.
like they come to you. And you might dismiss them if you're not ready to hear them, and go, no, I can't, whether it's I can't afford that, I could never do that, or no, that's not me. But the answer you get will be the answer you need. And whether you take action on that today or in 6 years' time, it will probably still be the same answer, but you're just not ready to listen to it right now.
Absolutely. And you'll find that it's the mind that takes over. Usually, if you come to a conclusion and it feels like it's in your body, there's something like in your gut or in your heart or down in your, you know, in your womb space, there's like a yes feeling, but then it's after that the thoughts come in, oh, well, I couldn't, you know, all these different thoughts or whatever it is, I can't do that. Well, that's the mind taking over. So, you know, it's about distinguishing them between them. Is this a fear response because it might feel unsafe? So you've got those thoughts that are stopping you, or can I feel it in my body? And I think once you're able to distinguish between them, it's then easier to, it's not easier, but it allows it to become a little bit more easy, where you can go, okay, these are just the thoughts that are stopping me. What can I do in order to move through them? And if you can feel it in your body, that's usually the answer. Because, yeah, your monkey mind's going to get in the way.
It certainly does. I was just thinking about, I'm writing a book, and I was just thinking that the opportunity to write the book came up a couple of years ago, and I'd listened to an audiobook that said one of the things you can do in your business is write a book. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, but I could never do that. And I listened to the same book 2 years on, and it was like, I just heard him say it and went, oh, that's what I need to do. I need to write a book. And I just thought, why did I not think of that? It was almost like I wasn't ready to hear it the first time, or that was way too scary for where I was 2 years ago. But now I'm a little bit more established, and I think, okay, well, I can, with the right support and with a lot of practice and time and effort and patience, it's something I can do. And again, just like anything we change in our lives, it takes the practice, the patience, the effort. And they're all skills we already have, because we will have used them in some areas of our lives already.
Absolutely.
And it's just transferring those skills to the whatever it is we want to achieve.
Yeah. And I think it's just a different like structure or environment that you use those skills that can sometimes be a bit unsettling. So you then retract instead of allowing yourself to explore it. And I think it's also allowing things to go wrong. Like, we don't have to be perfect at everything we do. And so that fear of not getting it right the first time can also be a barrier to moving forwards. And I think the more I let go of that, I mean, I've been teaching yoga for, I think it's been 5 or 6 years. I haven't run a retreat yet, and that was always something that I wanted to do. So this year I've got my retreat running in September, and it's, people have been waiting for it. And I was like, I'm just overthinking it, and that self-doubt and holding you back is totally normal, but once you move through it, you're kind of going, oh yeah, why didn't I do this? And there's so many people that have said that, like, I don't know why I didn't do it sooner, but it's not always easy to take that first step.
No.
But well done for you for getting on with your book. That's amazing.
Thank you. I think writing the first draft was the easy bit. I'm now going through editing the first draft, and I'm finding harder because I feel like I'm completely rewriting it. But they say that, because I'm working in a group to take me through the process, and they say that your first draft apparently is always complete rubbish. Or you feel that it's complete rubbish, but it's about not reading back, just keep getting it all out on the paper and then go back through it. So I mean, again, a huge learning process, I didn't do a degree at school. A lot of my training was practical based, and I've never had to write anything more than probably 3,000 or 4,000 words. So it's like, wow, it's huge, but thank you. So I was going to ask you, what is so powerful about what you do? And I feel like you've kind of touched on that already, but maybe you have a story to share or something that for you sums it up in your heart of, this is an example of the power of the breath work or any aspect of your work and how it maybe has impacted somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different elements that I can touch on, but I'll start with the breathwork actually, because my business name, Breathe Dance and Yoga, actually used to be Breathe Dance Company. So when I was a teacher and a freelance dance artist, I wanted a name that encompassed everybody. So if I was working with inclusive dance or dancers with disabilities, that it didn't feel that it was excluding them. So breathe was like, if we're not breathing, we're not alive. So at the very basic movement of the body, everybody's breathing, and then even if they can't move any other part of themselves, they've still got the breath. So that anchored us everybody together as being equal. When I added the yoga element, it just felt right that I named the business Breathe Dance and Yoga. And then over the years, I don't know why, but it kind of made me think, okay, well, the dance is just part of me. It's been part of my life since I was a child. I've got my degree. I've got all my experience of teaching. Like, I can do that with my eyes closed. It's not going anywhere. And I felt like I'd really delved into yoga, particularly yoga asana postures, and working with women in a functional way that allows their bodies to feel strong and resilient. So it's not always about getting into like these pretzel positions and back bends. I always want women to come away from my class feeling that they're connected into their bodies and they can get on with everyday life. They become stronger in a really functional way. And then breathe, which is like at the first word, I was like, well, I obviously understand breathing through pranayama, but there's so much more to it. Like, do I really feel secure? So it kind of started me on a little path of exploration and research. And I'd listened to a podcast, I think it was Russell Brand, and he was talking to Wim Hof. So that was like my first entry into like what breathwork is. And I think a lot of the breathwork stems from Eastern traditions. I think, a lot of what happens in breathwork, I can see that actually it's still present in pranayama and yoga, just in different ways. So it got me really interested, because we're also talking about the cold water therapy as well. And I had eczema. I have eczema. It's just very much under control. So there's been lots of things that I've done over my life around food and diet and creams and all sorts, but it's like eczema management is a really key part of my life. It will never kind of go away, and then I can be really in good stages, but if I forget about that, it creeps back in. I was really interested in how it would affect me, like the Wim Hof method. So I ended up finding a teacher based in Birmingham, and I did this session, and it was my interest was around the breath, but also doing the cold water as well. So we did in the morning this breathwork session, and it's a hyperventilatory technique. It's big breaths in and big breaths out, and then there's breath holds. It's quite intense. It's not something that anybody should necessarily go into lightly, But I kind of had this psychedelic experience, and then afterwards I was crying. So there was this release of trauma, or whatever it was, emotions that were stored. I don't want to say it was trauma, because I don't feel like I've had any traumatic experiences, and I think that word gets bandied around these days.
Yeah.
When it's not trauma, a bit of difficulty. So
Yeah.
I had this experience and I was like, wow, that's just through breathing. Like, how powerful is that? And then in the afternoon, we did the ice bath, and I was able to sit in it for 2 minutes. And then literally within a few days, my eczema on my scalp disappeared. Like, it just went.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, okay, this is incredible. So I've been reading some of his books and again, delving in. But then what I was doing, I was practicing this breath work, and then every so often it would trigger my asthma. So I was doing this breath work. I was like, I feel like I'm going to have an asthma attack. So what's going on here? As I was continuing my reading, I came across James Nestor and Patrick McKeown. James Nestor wrote Breath, and Patrick McKeown, The Oxygen Advantage. So as I was reading that, I've actually recognised, so it kind of went from one extreme to the other. So Wim Hof is quite extreme and hyperventilatory. And then Patrick McKeown, who teaches Buteyko, is actually about light, slow breathing through the nose. And that's really beneficial for things like asthma, but it also can help things like epilepsy, diabetes, all sorts of different health concerns by looking at your everyday breathing, and also looking at the level of oxygen and the level of carbon dioxide in the body and your sensitivity to that. And I understood then that carbon dioxide isn't just a waste gas, it's actually really important to the functions of the body. And the hemoglobin that the oxygen is attached to only releases the oxygen into the body in the presence of carbon dioxide. So that made sense then for the Wim Hof method, because you're literally getting rid of carbon dioxide because you're breathing really heavily. That's why you can hold your breath for so long, because your urge to breathe only comes from, so you've got chemoreceptors in the brain that are looking out for carbon dioxide. So it's the level of carbon dioxide in the body that triggers the desire to breathe. So if you've got no carbon dioxide in the body, you can hold your breath for quite a long time. And then as it rises, that then is the urge to breathe. But quite often we're too sensitive to it. So that means we breathe quicker and faster. We breathe, and then mouth breathing. So it took me kind of from one end of the scale all the way over to the other. But knowing now that the Buteyko method can really support my asthma, and actually really simple exercises that you can do during the day at your desk. You can't necessarily do Wim Hof at your desk. It just, again, transformed the way I look at breathing and how I teach it. And actually it's around being lighter and slower and using your diaphragm and just using your nose, because there's another gas, there's nitric oxide that we produce when we breathe through our nose, which I had no idea about. It feels like I've gone down this rabbit hole of learning, and I'm doing my Buteyko certification at the moment, where just by implementing these different ways of breathing, you can really impact your health. And I think it's important to note, again, that there's so many different breathing techniques, and all of them are valid. Every single breath work is valid. It's just that they're not suitable for every single person. If you're already like highly stressed and maybe feeling anxious, have health conditions, it's a good place to start with understanding what your breath pattern is like at the moment, and starting there before you go into the extreme ones. And I think that's not always talked about. There's something called your BOLT score, body oxygen level test. So you do a test to kind of actually see how long you can hold your breath for in a normal environment. And a really healthy person can hold their breath for up to 40 seconds. But there's lots of us, and me included, like if you've got asthma or something else, it'll be below 20. And if it's like in that 10 to 12 second zone, then really the big extreme breath work like Wim Hof or conscious connected breath work isn't going to be that beneficial for you. It can actually make you feel worse. So it's about finding out where you are. And then if you want to go and explore that, then definitely go and explore it. I still love Wim Hof and I love cold water, and I try and do cold showers every now and then. I stopped it for a while because it was actually triggering my perimenopause symptoms. So I was like, oh, okay, I need a little break from it. So I still love everything about it. But what I'm trying to do is when women work with me, is that they have something they can take into their everyday life. So it's something that they can come back to whilst they're at their desk or at work. So, or, in the morning, in the evening, that's really accessible, because those are the little steps and changes that you're going to make. And then, of course, if they want to go out and do a Wim Hof class or something else, holotropic breath work or anything like that, I think it's just important that you go to somebody who is qualified and really understands and is experienced about delivering that type of breath work, because there's so many nuances then with your biochemistry that you just need to be aware of, really. Yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but I think that was my experience of breath work, and then why I'm teaching what I do in a way that I do. So
wow, who'd have thought there was so much to breathe in?
So much. I'm still absorbing it. I'm like, really? Is that right? And simple things like, it goes back to how you chew your food, because that shapes your face, which then impacts like your nose. And if you're breathing through your mouth, again, that affects how your teeth grow and other things like that. So,
wow.
So for your listeners, just at least try and breathe through your nose all day.
Well, I was going to ask, what 1 or 2 or even 3 tips could you give to the listeners that they can apply in their lives immediately?
One of the things is, nasal breathing, I think, is key. I think what we need to understand is that the nose is designed for breathing and the mouth isn't. The mouth is just a hole that allows access to the lungs. So if you've got blocked nose, obviously it means you can still breathe, but yes, there's no function. And your nose has like little hairs in the sinuses. So it's like a filter system. And you've got your paranasal sinuses, and there's this whole kind of, as the air gets drawn in through your nose, it gets rotated, it gets cleansed, and then it goes down into the lungs. So it's your filter system. You want to do that so that the air that you're drawing in is actually cleaner. And then, as I said, you produce nitric oxide in your paranasal sinuses, which is a vasodilator. So as you breathe that in, it actually allows your bronchioles to open up wider. Also with your blood vessels, if you're somebody who gets cold hands and feet, then it actually allows that to open up through the blood vessels as well. It's an antiviral, an antifungal, antibacterial. So it has all these properties that actually helps you to clean the air before it even reaches the lungs. Breathing through the nose also activates the diaphragm. So it means that we're breathing and taking the air deeper into the lungs, because if you breathe through your mouth, it tends just to be in the upper chest area. If you're scared or you've been for a run, you might find that is what happens. Like, you'll breathe through your mouth, but it's all up here in the chest. So by breathing through the nose, it essentially restricts the airflow. So your diaphragm has to work a bit harder, and it slows down the air, and it just allows you to reach the lower lobes of the lungs. Now, the lower lobes of the lungs also have more blood there, just purely through gravity. So it allows a better exchange, so you get a more oxygen uptake into the body. The lower lobes of the lungs have more nerve endings that are connected to the parasympathetic nervous system, where the upper lobes of the lungs have more nerve endings connected to the sympathetic nervous system. So that's why, naturally, if you're in a fear state, if you're in fight or flight, you're going to breathe up here. And the breath is really the gateway. It's the one thing that you can take conscious control of. So if you are feeling stressed and you're breathing quickly, the moment you take hold of your breath, that sends a signal to the brain to say, it's okay, we're good. You can't consciously slow your heart rate down. You can't consciously switch your digestion back on, but you can consciously take hold of the breath. But I think there's a bit of a myth that taking a big deep breath is the way to calm down, and actually it puts you, it affects the chemical balance. So if you're breathing out through the mouth, again, you can get rid of too much CO2. So nasal breathing in and out, I would suggest, is the starting point. And just be aware that you're breathing into the lower part of your rib cage. You can even put your hands there, or even just think about breathing into the belly so that you bring it down into the body and it's not high up into the chest. That would be the first tip. The other one is to make it a bit lighter. It doesn't have to be like a big expansive inhale and exhale. If you look at a healthy baby when they're asleep, there's hardly any movement. That's why as mums you're like, are they okay? Are they still breathing? Because it's so light, but they're breathing into the belly, and that's how a natural healthy breath should be. You shouldn't hear your breath. You shouldn't necessarily see it. It should just be slow and light and down in low into the body. So and then the last tip to get you used to breathing through your nose, which had a ripple of what in the audience at Restival, is mouth taping. So you literally put a little strip of tape, like micropore tape, over your lips and keep that on during the night as you sleep, and that increases, again, it'll stop your mouth getting dry for a start, and it will just encourage you to breathe through your nose, more nitric oxide. You actually get a deeper sleep and wake up fresher. So I think there's probably enough to be getting on with. It blows my mind. I mean, I get quite excited about it. But there's so many different things we're taught, I think, particularly in the Western world, like take a big deep breath to calm down.
Yes.
And actually you might find as you do that, you become lightheaded. And that is to do with the vasoconstriction then, because the balance of CO2 is out of whack. And if people are particularly with anxiety, if people are having a panic attack or anything like that, remember you used to see people with paper bags. Yes. Breathing in, and that's to rebalance the CO2. But a better way is literally just to cup your hands, place them over your mouth and nose, and keep breathing like that. So you get a bit of fresh air, kind of new air through the fingers. It's not all just kind of repurposed breath. But breathe in a lighter and slower and through your nose. It's a game changer. Wow. And it affects your focus as well and everything else. And of course, it's so, like I said, I keep coming back to this because I don't want to like demonize and say there's don't do other breath works. There's lots of different ways of connecting into the breath. But if you're not looking at your breath in all the hours that you're just going about your daily life, you're not going to get the full benefits of what you're doing. So it's being self-aware of your breathing and going, oh, actually, I'm breathing through my mouth a lot here. And for any teachers or public speakers or anybody who talks a lot for their jobs, you're naturally going to be breathing through your mouth. So it's about taking some time after to rebalance that, because sometimes you'll finish teaching and you're just exhausted, and it's mainly to do with your body actually isn't fully oxygenated because you're talking and getting rid of too much CO2, and then that affects the impact on your energy and focus as well.
Wow. I'm really conscious of my breathing sitting. I'm like, keep my mouth closed, breathe in slowly.
It's hard when you're talking. I think,
shallow breaths.
If you stop just to breathe through your nose whilst you're talking, it becomes very slow, and then it's not necessarily that good to listen to. So we can't, I think it's being realistic. You can't do it every moment of the day, but you can do it for a lot of the day, and just being aware of that. And if you go for a walk as well, see if you can keep the mouth closed. There's more and more research now coming out for athletes, if they, and particularly runners, if they keep their mouth closed, they're just more efficient with their energy. It takes them a while to get used to it. Obviously, there's almost like a training period where the body has to readjust, because exercise releases CO2. So naturally, you're wanting to get the breath in and out a little bit quicker. So it's harder to keep your mouth closed during exercise. So you almost need to pull back on the exertion so that you're breathing through your nose as much as you can, and then gradually increase what you're doing. And Patrick McCowan, in a recent training that he did, he's now going into like some of the elite football clubs to talk about this. So it's, as soon as those kind of main big football clubs have it, it's going to start filtering through, like anything. Like it goes to those that are really trying to push their boundaries within a particular sport, and then before you know it, it's filtered down to the public. So there's so many elements to it, but the fact that it can help with health and things like asthma and, like I say, diabetes, epilepsy. When I had COVID, it really supported me in kind of recovering from that. So there's lots of benefits.
Amazing. Wow, thank you. There's so much to digest and take in. It's really, really fascinating. Another question I was going to ask you is, what would you tell your younger self? What one thing would you tell your younger self?
I would say everything works out and you don't need to rush anything. Enjoy the moments and be in the moment more. Don't worry about the future, and trust, because I think I do trust myself a lot now, but that's taken a long time. And had I done that in my late teens, early 20s, I think it would have been a different journey. But, my journey is my journey to bring me to where I am. So there's nothing I would change.
No.
I'd probably just say, be in the moment more, enjoy the time, don't rush, and everything will be okay.
I like that. And it is something that, just those words, be in the moment, when I talk to my clients about their relationship with food and eating, if we can be in the moment when we're eating, we eat so differently. But we very rarely are when we've got a tricky relationship with food, because maybe we're eating in secret, we're eating in the car, maybe we're eating in front of the telly after a really long day, maybe we're rushing food because, we feel like we don't want anyone else to see us have it, or whatever it is. But we're rarely in the moment. When you just stop and think, how much of this do I really want? What really nourishes my body? What do I need right now? What's going to give me energy for the rest of the day? What else have I got going on? And we take that moment, then we are far more likely to make different decisions and choices around what we actually eat. So I love that. Be in the moment.
Yeah, I can definitely see that with food. For me, I'm just better without dairy and gluten. And sometimes I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to allow myself a little bit. And then sometimes it's fine. And then I'll go beyond that. And then my eczema will have a little resurgence. And I'm like, so I also have all these different like relationships with food that some feel trickier than others. Yeah. But the times where I just sit and enjoy always feel more nourished. It's almost like the nourishment is tenfold from the food, because there's an awareness of what you're eating.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so how can people find you if they would like to know more or work with you?
Well, so my business is called Breathe, Dance and Yoga. My website and my Instagram and my Facebook are all the same. I tried to keep it as simple as I could. So it's either, my website is www.breathedanceandyoga.com, or using the handle at Breathe Dance and Yoga for Facebook and Instagram. But do a search for Cat Merrick, cat with a C, otherwise, on Facebook, and that should, or Instagram, and that should bring me up. It's got my face. Oh, mind you, this is this is a recording.
Podcast.
So you won't know what it looked like. But, it'll come up Breathe, Dance and Yoga when you find Cat Merrick. So feel free for anybody just to reach out, have a chat. Let me know if there's something new that you've learned, whether it resonated, you want to learn more. I would love to answer any questions.
Brilliant, thank you. And obviously I will pop your links in the show notes so people can just scroll down that. But I know for me, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple, it's sometimes a bit hard to navigate from the show to the show notes. So if you're not used to doing that and you just listen and kind of move on, then it's good to have heard it as well. I'm sure everyone can remember breathe, dance and yoga, so they will find you. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Cat. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm so glad our paths have crossed, and hopefully we will stay in touch, and who knows whatever the future holds. But I'm really, really glad we've connected, and as I say, it's a pleasure to have you as a guest on the podcast. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I've absolutely loved it. And yes, we will definitely keep in touch.
Yes.
I'm sure there's more conversations to be had at some point.
I'm sure there is. There always is. And everyone comes into your life for a reason, don't they, as they say?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So thank you, Kat. So listeners, that's it for today. Don't forget to reach out, whether that's to me or to Kat. I love hearing from you, and it really inspires me to know that you're making changes in your life and that you benefit from what we talk about on these podcasts. So when I get a message, just say, I've listened to episode, whatever it is, and this is what's resonated with me, it literally makes my heart sing, because I know that the content that I'm putting out and the people that I talk to on the podcast are adding value to your life. So please do reach out. And if you're listening to this before the 13th of July, I'm really hoping to get this out over the weekend, because I know the 13th of July is next week, but I do have a workshop running next Wednesday evening. It's called Diet Free Summer, and it is basically for you if you are starting to panic about the summer and thinking, I've been really managing my relationship with food, but a lot of women say to me, it all goes out of the window at summertime. It's kind of like the kids break up from school and that's it, or the grandchildren are with us more and that's it. I crash and burn. And I even hear people say, I know I'm going to gain weight over the summer. I know I'm going to gain weight when I go on holiday. So you know me, I'm all about getting away from the diet and having a peaceful relationship with food, but still being able to realign your weight. So this workshop is about exactly that. It's about being able to embrace eating this summer, being able to just have the ice cream and not feel guilty about it, because you are completely okay with that decision. So if you want to find out how to do that, then join me on Wednesday for the workshop. The links will be in my bio. Hopefully you're already following me and connected in some way if you're listening to this podcast. Yeah, so that's it. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, day, evening, wherever you are in the world. And I will see you very soon. Take care.